In case you missed it, week 7 in the NFL has come and gone with a number of unexpected results. But ultimately, in the end, it really doesn't matter because it's now time for the Sports Ball Network's NFL Week 7 breakdown. Kicking off this wacky week 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars pretty much handled business against the New Orleans Saints, winning 31-24. And I just want to say there's really something magical about the Jacksonville Jaguars after the London trips under the Doug Peterson era. Last year, after their 21-17 loss to Denver in London, the Jaguars rallied and saved their season, going 7-2 over the final 9 weeks, and ended up taking the AFC South. This year, going into London, the team had a bad 1-2 start, but after their 2 wins in London, they've been undefeated since. I don't know what they have in the water up there, but clearly it's working. Now sitting at 5-2 on the season, Jacksonville looks to be clearly the best team in the AFC South, and really, given that there's no real frontrunners in the AFC, one of the best teams in the conference as well. New Orleans, meanwhile, fell to 3-4. Derek Carr did not look good. The offense, outside of Alvin Kamara, was really lackluster. And the defense disappointed. The NFC South is still a relatively weak division, but performances like this, coupled with wins by Atlanta and Tampa Bay every other week, are not going to be helping New Orleans in their quest to get back to the playoffs. And if things don't change fast for this team, the season could quickly go off the rails. Excuse me, what was that, Detroit? I said you were the best team in the NFL last week, and then you put up this stinker? Come on. In case you missed it, the Baltimore Ravens manhandled the Detroit Lions 38-6. Baltimore moves to 5-2 in the season. Lamar looked great in this game. He threw for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns. He ran for another. Baltimore's defense put the clamps on a very prolific Lions offense. This team's really good, and I did not think they would be 5-2 at this point in the season, but they are. So kudos to Baltimore. And with Cleveland dealing with a variety of issues, Pittsburgh really not looking that good, and Cincinnati at about 500. It's going to be hard for anyone to say that the division is anyone's but Baltimore's to lose. The Lions, terrible performance, really, really awful. Jared Goff did not look good. The offense as a whole didn't look good, but there is some silver lining. Jahmyr Gibbs did great in getting more work. He had 11 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown and 9 receptions for 58 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown was still his usual self, but this is a game that you're going to want to shake off. And given that the Lions now get to play a Raiders team that was absolutely manhandled by the Chicago Bears without Justin Fields, it's one that they likely will. Speaking of the Las Vegas Raiders getting manhandled by the Chicago Bears, that's exactly what happened. The Bears destroyed the Raiders, winning 30-12. They moved to 2-5 on the season. And rookie Tyson Bagent was all right at quarterback, though the Bears really need Justin Fields back soon. And I'm not just saying that because I have Cole Kmet in fantasy. They will, however, not be getting him for at least another week, as Bagent was named the starter for the upcoming game against the Chargers. But hey, if the Bears are able to put up another performance like this one against LA, who knows? They might be 3-5 after next week. The real story out of this game, though, is the Raiders. This was a bad Bears team relying on a rookie quarterback making his first start. And the Raiders were 3-3 going into this game. So winning here in a stacked AFC would have gone a long way towards helping their playoff hopes, which I now believe are now non-existent. Aiden O'Connell and Brian Hoyer at quarterback were really, really bad. They threw 3 interceptions together. The Raiders offense couldn't do anything. Defense couldn't stop anything. This is not a good football team. I don't see the Raiders making the playoffs, but given that they already have 3 wins and are likely to eke out a couple more, I don't really see them getting a high draft pick either, which is probably the worst case scenario for this team. They're too good to lose too many games to get a good draft pick and draft a good rookie quarterback, but they're not good enough to really get anywhere. They're mediocre. That's the word I would use to describe them. They're mediocre, and that's the worst thing to be in the NFL. The Cleveland Browns ended up winning in a thrilling comeback 39-38 against the Indianapolis Colts. This game was really a shootout all game long, but Cleveland was down early. They had to claw their way back. The defense was not great for Cleveland, but it did enough. They ended up having a strip sack touchdown, uh, blocked field goal, 4 sacks and interception. This Cleveland defense is legit. But the story for the Browns is on offense because quarterback Deshaun Watson left the game early despite being medically cleared to return. It's a bit strange that there would be so much discontent from him, considering the amount of money Cleveland is paying him, and the fact that the team is good. The Browns are 4-2, and with competent quarterback play, I would say they should be the easy favorite to win the AFC North. But as I mentioned in the Baltimore part of the video earlier, there's a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes in Cleveland that's preventing this. And one can't help but think that at some point this is going to blow up the season. Still, the Browns are a really, really good football team. And if they are able to navigate these off the field issues, they should be competing for the playoffs. Gardner Minshew for the Indianapolis Colts had the game of his life. He threw for 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. He ran for 2 more. He had to do everything to keep Indianapolis in this game once Cleveland started rallying, and he did. It just wasn't enough. Still, the Colts showed that they're not going to be a pushover without rookie phenom Anthony Richardson, and that they can sneak out a couple wins here and there against pretty good teams. Of course, this season is not going to be very pretty for the Colts, and they're not going to make the playoffs. But the fact that they're showing that they can put up games like this is highly, highly encouraging for their future. And once they get Anthony Richardson back in 2024, this team could possibly be a major contender in a stacked AFC. The Patriots took it to the Buffalo Bills and got a surprising win this weekend, 29-25. Like I said on previous episodes, never count out Bill Belichick. His defense was really, really good, especially in the first half. They held Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills offense to very limited gains for the most part. It was only really late in this game that Josh Allen was able to rally the team and start putting up points. And given that Bill Belichick has reportedly signed a major extension with New England, he's not going anywhere. Like I said, he's going to be able to see this thing through, and that ultimately he's getting the respect that he is due from the Patriots brass. Mac Jones did pretty well this game. He only had 5 incompletions. He threw for 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, including the game winner to Mike Gesicki. He had time in the pocket today. He was able to perform. I still do not think he's a great NFL quarterback, and I am of the belief that the Patriots are going to draft a rookie come April. But who knows? Maybe the season turns around and Mac Jones gets another year. Buffalo does not look like the Buffalo Bills. They are 4-3. They're struggling on offense, especially during the first half. You saw it against the Giants. They almost lost. They did not have a single point going into the fourth quarter. It's much the same story this game, and I don't know where to fix it. But Buffalo is going to need to fix it fast if they want to remain competitive in a tough AFC. They're already behind Miami for the division, so they are likely competing for a wild card at this point. And with teams like Cleveland and potentially Pittsburgh lurking around, there are not a lot of mistakes this team can make and still feel comfortable. Only the future will tell what this team's fate is, but right now it's not looking very good in Upper New York. The New York Giants moved to 2-5 on the season, winning against the Washington Commanders 14-17. And oh goodness, this game was ugly. Really, the only standout performance here was the Giants' offense, who were led by Tyrod Taylor, who was efficient. He had 279 yards and 2 touchdowns. Darren Waller finally had the breakout game we were hoping for. 7 receptions, 98 yards and a touchdown. Saquon Barkley, 77 yards on the ground, 41 and a touchdown through the air. But even with the stars on New York's offense coming out to perform, they only managed 14 points. So it's not like they were some hyper efficient machine. Credit to the Washington defense for really holding them in check all game. The problem, though, with Washington is their offense, and specifically their offensive line. Sam Howell had no time all game. He did not have a great game either. He had 249 yards through the air and an interception. But the story here is that the Giants got 6 sacks, which now puts Sam Howell at 40 sacks on the season. Yeah, you heard that right. Sam Howell has been sacked 40 times through 7 games. Russell Wilson last year was sacked a total of 55 times. At this rate, I can't imagine Sam Howell is going to get out of this season healthy. He's getting murdered. And at this rate, Sam Howell is going to be sacked a league high 97 times this season. Washington really needs to step up their offensive line play if they want any hopes of making anything of this season, or really ensuring that Sam Howell can be their quarterback of the future. Now, although the New York Giants aren't likely to win many more games this season, I do want to note that their defense has been playing lights out over the past 2 weeks, holding Buffalo and Washington to 14 and 7 points, respectively. If their defense can continue to play like this and their offense can maybe improve, who knows? They might be able to make something of this season. But again, this is not exactly a great team in New York, and they are missing their starting quarterback. So who knows? The Atlanta Falcons ended up beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a very ugly game, 16-13. I did not expect this outcome, but really, the actual game is not the story here. The story is that the Atlanta Falcons failed to disclose Bijan Robinson's illness, which pretty much kept him out of the entire game. Bijan only had 1 carry for 3 yards. And this is important because a lot of people gamble on the NFL, and a lot of people put a lot of bets on Bijan to have a good day today. And had they had known that the Falcons were not planning on playing him, they probably would not have done so. Arthur Smith has done this type of stuff before, and if you play fantasy football, you'll know this is nothing new. He does this with Kyle Pitts all the time, but it seems that finally it's coming back to bite him a bit, and the NFL may end up punishing this team if they deem that they failed to disclose information properly, which they very clearly did. Still, on the football sides of things, the Falcons are 4-3. This team is actually really good outside of quarterback and coach, which is the 2 most important things a team needs to have. Desmond Ritter was all right today, but he had a number of throws that probably should have been interceptions. Still, he showed that he might have something in this league, and he could still have a decent career yet. Meanwhile, for the Buccaneers, really bad game. Baker did not look good. He had 275 yards, a touchdown, but he also had a really bad interception. Offense was not really able to get much going, and this is a game, much like what the Lions had this week, that the Buccaneers are going to want to forget if they have any aspirations of winning this division, which, despite Atlanta leading at 4-3, is still relatively weak and very much up in the air. Led by rookie wide receivers Jake Bobo and Jackson Smith-Njigba, the Seattle Seahawks took care of business to start off the afternoon slate of games, beating the Arizona Cardinals 20-10. Each of the rookie wide receivers in Seattle had 4 receptions for over 60 yards and a touchdown, and both looked really great, which is really good for the future of this team. Kenneth Walker ran for 105 yards, and overall, Geno was efficient on the day. He threw for 219 and 2 touchdowns. Seattle did what it was supposed to do in this game. They beat a lesser team in Arizona, and they are now 4-2 and squarely in pole position for an NFC wildcard spot after this week. Arizona, meanwhile, falls to 1-6. Josh Dobbs had another inconsistent performance, 19 for 33, 146 yards. He did run for 43 yards and a touchdown, though. And really, the Cardinals are waiting for Kyler Murray to come back. He did get off the pup this week, and his 21-day window was activated. And although Kyler's not going to be starting against the Ravens this upcoming Sunday, chances are we'll see him on the field a week or two after that, which is important, despite the fact that the Cardinals might not be playing for this year and are likely to have a high draft pick. They have plenty of young players on this team that need to begin to gel together, as well as a rookie head coach in Jonathan Gannon, who really needs to get his culture implemented in Arizona. So the fact that Kyler is coming back and is going to be able to play for at least the back half of the season is really, really good for them. Pittsburgh managed to beat the Los Angeles Rams 24-17 on a very controversial call at the end of the game, where Pittsburgh was granted a first down on a quarterback sneak that was at least half a yard short. Pittsburgh moves to 4-2 on the season, and they are in contention for a wild card spot, in no small part due to their absolutely dominant defense. The Pittsburgh defense had 2 sacks, but they also had a crucial interception against Matthew Stafford and only allowed the Rams 17 points. Pittsburgh's offense was not particularly great, but George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, who has returned from injury, both were pretty good. Both had at least 5 receptions and over 70 yards. And on the ground, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren both managed to score. Pittsburgh has the pieces to make a playoff run, and really it's up to quarterback Kenny Pickett to put them together. For Los Angeles, they fall to 3-4. The running game with Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman was all right. Both had over 60 yards and over 12 carries on the day. Darrell Henderson had a ridiculous 18 carries on the day and the touchdown as well. Puka Nacua is awesome. He had 8 receptions for 154 yards, completely overshadowing Cooper Kupp, who was pretty silent on the day. 2 receptions for 29 yards for Cooper. But this game, despite being a loss, was good for the Rams. They showed that they are able to not solely rely on the Stafford to Kupp connection, and perhaps it'll open things up for them offensively. Defensively, Los Angeles was a bit disappointing. They only had 2 sacks, but I'm going to guess that they bounce back next week. This was perhaps the ugliest football game of the week in a week with a lot of ugly football games. The Denver Broncos managed to outscore the Green Bay Packers for 60 minutes, winning 19-17. I don't know how, but they did. Russell Wilson was 20 for 29 for 194 yards and a touchdown. Javonte Williams, another week removed from his injury, ran for 82 yards and had 3 receptions for 14 yards. Cortland Sutton continues to impress as well. He had 6 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown. Denver's not a good team, but this game really wasn't about Denver. This is about Green Bay, who is somehow a worse team. Jordan Love continues to struggle. He threw for 180 yards, and although he had 2 touchdowns, he had 1 interception as well. And really, Green Bay just struggled to move the ball the whole time. They weren't really able to get anything going here. And so far, 7 weeks into the season, the Jordan Love experience after Aaron Rodgers has been a mixed bag, which really, I think, tells you all you need to know about him and the future of his NFL career. Chances are Love is not a franchise quarterback, and although he could turn things around by the end of the season, given what I've seen so far, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. which of course means that Green Bay is probably going to struggle for a bit. Which, considering the Packers have had two Hall of Fame level quarterbacks over the past 30 years, is probably something that should have been expected. Sorry, Packers fans, but you knew it was eventually going to happen, and it appears that now is the time. Kansas City Chiefs really took care of business against the Los Angeles Chargers, winning 31-17. Patrick Mahomes threw for 424 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was phenomenal. Isaiah Pacheco, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce all looked great. The Kansas City defense had 2 interceptions and 5 sacks. Really, they have come into their own this season. And what this game showed is that Kansas City, as long as they have Mahomes and as long as they continue to play at a decent level, is still the class of the AFC. Los Angeles, meanwhile, falls to 2-4, and they do not look like a very good team. It's especially true for Justin Herbert, who has disappointed so far this season. He had 259 yards and 2 interceptions this game to go along with the touchdown. On the ground, Austin Eckler struggled. He had 14 carries for 45 yards. And even on the defensive side, although LA did have that interception, they also only had 1 sack, and they really failed to get any sort of pressure on Patrick Mahomes or the Chiefs. At this point, one has to question if this season is quickly becoming lost for Los Angeles. And as we've mentioned before on this channel, one also has to question how long Brandon Staley is going to keep his job. If I had to guess, it's not going to be for much longer. The Philadelphia Eagles won in pretty convincing fashion on Sunday Night Football, 31-17. Jalen Hurts was great. He threw for 279 yards and 2 touchdowns, ran for another. DeAndre Swift ran for 62 yards. A.J. Brown continues to put up historic numbers. Not seen since Calvin Johnson. He had 10 receptions for 137 yards and a touchdown. The Philadelphia defense had an interception and 4 sacks. This was the bounce back performance that Philadelphia really needed, especially after that ugly loss to the Jets. And they look good. They look like the best team in the NFC. Really not much to say for Philadelphia here. Things finally seem to be humming along, and hopefully they continue to perform at the level that they should. As for Miami, I can't help but think that this team is one of those squads that can really beat up on bad teams and can win the games that they're supposed to win. But when they play an actual good team like potentially Buffalo or Philadelphia, they tend to shrink when the lights get bright. Tua had 216 yards and a touchdown in the air. Raheem Mostert struggled on the ground, only getting 45 yards. Tyreek had 11 receptions for 88 and a touchdown, but never really broke out. Miami's defense did have an interception and 3 sacks, but it also allowed 31 points and really in the fourth quarter got absolutely dominated on the ground. Not a good week for Miami, and although they lead in the AFC East, Buffalo and New York are lurking. The AFC is really stacked. So if they do slip, they could find themselves struggling to make the playoffs. But still, I think this Miami team is really good. I think they probably will make the playoffs. Just that they have shown, at least to me so far, through these first 7 weeks, that they can beat bad teams, but they can't really beat good ones. Wrapping things up on Monday night, the Minnesota Vikings surprised the world, beating the San Francisco 49ers 22-17. Let's talk about Minnesota here first, who is now 3-4 and is a very interesting team to watch out for. Kirk Cousins got back to his MVP level play. He threw for 378 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jordan Addison had 7 receptions for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was really good, filling in for Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson, 11 receptions for 86 yards. Minnesota's defense finally stepped up, 2 interceptions and a sack. It seems like the Vikings may be finally finding their stride after a slow start to the season. And at 3-4, and with very winnable games over the next couple weeks, we could be talking about Minnesota as a sleeper team to not only make the playoffs, but potentially win the NFC North if Detroit slips. Meanwhile, for San Francisco, it was a rough day at the office. Brock Purdy continued to struggle like he did last week. He threw for 272 yards, but he also had two very bad interceptions. Christian McCaffrey, though, was great. He had two touchdowns and looked fine. Nothing to worry about there. San Francisco's defense didn't really do much, which I think is really the reason why they lost this game. Only a single interception, no sacks against a very suspect Vikings offensive line. Something's wrong in San Francisco, and it has reared its ugly head over the past 2 weeks. And although San Francisco is very likely to win their division and make the playoffs, nothing's guaranteed in the NFL. And honestly, if they keep playing like this come playoff time, they may find themselves quite disappointed. Thank you so much for watching the Sports Ball Network's NFL Week 7 breakdown. If you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and we'll see you in the next one.